Okay, so we are here to talk about this Idaho case and the Dateline episode. Did you at all manage to catch some of it?
I watched it. I was blown away by it. I was so blown away that I watched it again. It's 2 hours long. It's like a longer episode of Dateline, but I was like, you can't even catch all of the new things that you're learning the first time around. And they kind of, they kind of breeze over some of the evidence too. Like you realize like, wow, I've never heard this tidbit of evidence before. And you go back and watch it again. I was taking notes. I was so interested in the whole thing. And I'll share a funny story. I sometimes my wife and I will watch some of these things, at night in bed, and she usually falls asleep within the first 5 minutes of watching it. But I kept on elbowing her. I'm like, you gotta wake up and look at this, because this is crazy. Really, really fascinating stuff. It was wild.
It was. So I'm glad you said that, because I watched it 3 times and I was like, obviously I wanted to put a video together and try my best to summarize it. But that in itself was a giant task, because I'm like, how? There's so much information. So all I focused on was, okay, what was new? What's this new evidence and the timeline, which I'm quickly going to just show everyone this in case they missed the video that I made, and also to know what we're going to be discussing today. So if you didn't watch the video that I made, you guys have homework. The video is in my video section. I'll make sure to link it for you. It's also on the playlist, right? But basically, what is new from this Dateline episode? It was launched on May 9th of 2025. It's the third in the series from Dateline on the Idaho murders. And so there was new, never before seen surveillance footage of the alleged vehicle, new ominous selfies and digital evidence of Bryan Kohberger, the suspect in this case, new interviews with acquaintances, new insights into Kohberger's mind, new timeline details, including phone calls with his dad for 2 hours after the murders, and new previously unreported brutality, and also blood on a chair in one of the rooms, which would have been Xana's room. So that's a lot. Even just that list is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, even half of that would have been a lot, but it just went on and on and on with all the new information they had.
Yes. So for you, if I quickly bring up, I've actually got I'm going to put it on quietly, just silent, so you can talk over it if you want. But seeing this, for you as a former prosecutor and now defense attorney, I mean, what can this hurt the case at all if they have this evidence, this brand new evidence, which is surveillance footage within the time frame that the murders were committed, meaning the car is coming and going, then it disappears and it speeds away. So it gives you that exact time frame from when they believe the murders were committed. What are your thoughts about this?
I mean, if you're the prosecution, I don't think you're happy about this. I don't think you're happy that this evidence has come out. I don't think it's going to hurt their case. I don't think it's going to, it's not like this is something that they're worried about somehow. The defense has all of this as well. So it's not like this is evidence that they're worried about strategically backfiring on them. But you remember, so much of this case, there has been a concern about the media attention, to the point that they moved it from Moscow all the way down to Boise, hours away, just to avoid all of the media attention and not affect potential jurors. This information now, I mean, we know so much more about this case. I imagine that both the prosecutor, probably the defense as well, are beside themselves with all this information being out there. There's a court date for them coming up, I think, this Thursday. There's a new status conference or hearing that they're having. I can't imagine this will not become a part of it. I can't imagine that this is not going to be something the judge is going to be very concerned with.
Right. I wonder if they're going to stream that hearing, or is it?
Yeah, right.
There's a sealed hearing coming up, I believe. I don't know if it's that one. I have to recheck my dates and my calendar, But wow, that's probably going to come up, as you said. I think some of these elements of this Dateline episode could help the defense, as much as people, I don't know if they've discussed that really, just because it feeds into their narrative about Kohberger being on the autism spectrum, having OCD. It like kind of could help them bolster their case with that. But at the same time, having this new surveillance footage and all this media, the social media things that they've picked up, and the selfies, phone calls, timelines. I mean, it's very interesting as well with what they'll do with this.
Yes. And it just goes to show you and kind of teach us all the lesson that I know that there was a lot of people speculating about, like, oh, there's not really much evidence out there. And, oh, all they have is that DNA. And people love to kind of run wild. And you always have to say, hold on, take a deep breath. We don't have everything. We don't know what's going to come out in trial. And I think this kind of proves that. Like, if you had questions about what they knew ahead of time and whether or not they feel they have enough evidence to proceed, I feel like just what we learned through this Dateline might answer a lot of those questions. They know a lot more than we were led to even believe. And that's because the case has been so kind of under these gag orders and, motions to seal and so closely guarded. But you're right, on top of the surveillance video and the phone calls and the changing license plates and all of that interesting kind of related to the crime stuff, they did a lot of interviews with friends of his or acquaintances of his. And you're right, almost to a person, they all talk about this kind of weird awkwardness, social kind of weirdness about him, I guess is the best way of putting it, that he just didn't react to social cues the same way. And that might play into that the autism argument that the defense is trying to make. And especially if the prosecution plans on calling any of those people as witnesses. I don't know if they would or why they would, but if they do, I think that might even open the door to the defense bringing in some of that evidence ahead of time.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I wonder now. So this is the biggest question that I got on the comments on that video that I put out yesterday. There's 1,200 comments so far.
Wow.
I'm trying to read them all. So thank you everyone who's already liked, shared, and commented. And there's a definite, repeat of this questions. Everyone's very worried about, but what about the gag order? Which I just had to check my notes again. The gag order was put in place already on January 3rd of 2023. The murders occurred November 13th of 2022, and Kohberger was arrested on December 30th of 2022. So very swiftly, the gag order was put in place by Judge Megan Marshall. And on January 18th of 2023, it was expanded with an amended non-dissemination order, which includes attorneys representing witnesses, victims and victims' families, the prosecution, the defense, and law enforcement. So with that gag order in mind, this is everybody's biggest question. That's why I wanted to make sure we pick your brain today. With the gag order in place, how the hell did Dateline manage to get this info? And can it harm the case? Can it help the case?
The answer is somebody might be in trouble, quite frankly. Like, I agree with you. This gag order, well, first of all, I mean, the gag order is about, anybody coming forward and making comments to the media, right? So that's why we haven't seen any interviews. We've got nothing from the attorneys. There's no, bank of microphones sitting outside of the courthouse every day to get all these comments. It's kind of radio silence aside from what takes place inside of the court. But on top of that, in addition to a gag order, and just usually the way that police operate is they keep their investigation very tightly controlled because they don't want this information getting out. They don't want people reporting on things perhaps inaccurately. I mean, think about this. We don't, no one has confirmed a lot of what we're learning. Who knows how accurate it is? Dateline is saying that they have unnamed sources that they believe to be reliable. I don't know what that means, but I will tell you, I imagine there are a lot of very difficult closed door meetings taking place today in the law enforcement community, even in the FBI, in the prosecutor's office. To me, this smells of someone on the inside just leaking all this information. This wasn't like, I mean, even Dateline goes almost as far as to say that this was not something where they got this information through FOIA requests or other, kind of investigatory tools. This sounds like someone came to them, told them a bunch of stuff, shared with them a bunch of things, photographs included, videotape included, and then just said, don't name me and don't let anybody even know who I am. And Dateline ran with it. It's pretty wild.
Could there be lawsuits flying anywhere eventually or not?
I don't think lawsuits, I don't think, because when you're talking about a lawsuit, you're always talking about damages. So you have to wonder like who is really harmed by all of this. I don't even think it goes as far as to being criminal. Like, I don't know if there's a crime committed here, but perhaps people could lose their jobs for sure. I mean, if you imagine if this was like an FBI agent leaked this information to the press, or even somebody within the, the Moscow or Boise law enforcement community leak this to the press, that person's getting canned. I'm telling you right now, like if this is, somebody on the inside, because one of the things that was really curious to me is the photographs. They showed those selfies of him wearing a hood. They showed some stuff where he had like taken pictures of his apartment building and pictures of his car. Yeah,
like
these.
that. Yeah.
They're very grainy. Like this doesn't look like the copies, like they got it directly from his phone, right? So it almost looks like someone got a hold of a lower resolution copy of some of these things and then leaked that. So I don't know how they got their hands on it to begin with. Yeah, the whole thing with Ted Bundy and everything too. It just, the whole thing kind of, like I said, stinks of an insider leaking information. And I imagine if you're the FBI or your law enforcement, you're opening up an investigation. You're trying to figure out who did this.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question for that, but somebody here says No Belief says gag order doesn't apply to the media. So that's the thing. I think that's obviously how they can share all of this, because it doesn't apply to the media. It applies to attorneys representing witnesses, victims' families, prosecution, defense, and law enforcement. But I guess what you're bringing up is, what if it's someone in law enforcement that has somehow shared this? So this is my question. What if, because there's already a bit of a rumor going around about that I saw on X today. What if somebody is married to an FBI agent and that spouse is the one sharing information on social media? What happens then?
Again, it's not, see, the gag order isn't really the thing that's at play here. In my view, the gag order prevents, like the person who left the comment, prevents communication with the media. The media is allowed to do whatever they want to do. Like, I don't believe Dateline did anything illegal here. Dateline may have done some things that are questionable as far as reporting guidelines and protocols and everything else, as far as like having confirmed sources and all of that type of stuff. Maybe they did. I don't want to call Dateline into question. Maybe they did confirm all of this and are keeping their sources confidential, which happens sometimes. But the real issue is what kind of internal, you're an FBI agent, you're getting background checks a mile long. I mean, your DNA, your fingerprints, everything is entered and you are background checked. And that extends to, these kind of oaths of confidentiality that you take in these investigations. And that extends to what you share with family members. And if you share with, I've heard this same rumor, if you share with your spouse, not only information, but actual documents and photographs, and that person goes out and leaks it, you may not have committed a crime per se, and you may not have violated the court's gag order, but the FBI is not going to be too pleased with that agent. And there's going to be repercussions.
Right. So maybe we just will never know who the source was.
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to find out that something has been done. Like, I have a feeling that we're going to learn that somebody's been fired, somebody's been, something's happened. We might not know why, but we could probably connect the dots.
Right. Oh my. Ethan Chapin said, would this jeopardize the case, the juror pool? So that's the next question everyone has is, oh my, with all this information, is this not building a narrative about the suspect who's innocent until proven guilty? Does it not taint a potential jury pool?
Absolutely. I mean, that was, again, why they moved this case from Moscow to Boise. They're very concerned about the information that's been out there already. They're very concerned about the effect on the community. And now I can't imagine, it's given everybody heartburn and headaches. I mean, because now this is another thing they're going to have to bring up. I don't think the judge is going to I certainly don't think the judge is going to change venue again, because you can't escape Dateline, right? I mean, it's, everywhere. And I don't think the judge is going to delay the trial, because I can't imagine what a delay would help. But it's going to be another thing that they're going to need to ask potential jurors about. Have you watched this episode? Or have you learned about stuff that came out in this episode? Has that affected you? Have you prejudged this case? It's just, it just causes more and more headaches for everybody involved.
Now, here's my question. So a lot of what was shared. So we've got the surveillance footage, of course, that this has never been seen before. But there have been YouTubers that have leaked other angles of other footage before. So I don't know what their source was. So my point is, the state says they have like hundreds of videos of this alleged vehicle. So is this really such a big deal? Because you can speculate that that's the vehicle and that's the time frame, but you just don't know. It kind of matches what the documents say. But I mean, is it so riveting? And the next question, which is similar, is a lot of what was shared was about maybe Bryan Kohberger's Google searches, which could have to do with what he was studying. He was doing his PhD in criminology. So I'm like, what if it means nothing at all for the trial strategy to actually be able to convict him or to defend him? It doesn't seem like a lot of that will really play out in the courtroom, will it?
Really, really good point. First of all, to your question about the videotape, you're right. This doesn't necessarily move the needle all that much. I mean, we see a car, we can't see a license plate, we can't even really see what kind of make and model the car is. I think that car is consistent with what we already know as far as like the description of the suspect vehicle. It is a different view, but we've seen similar videos. So I agree with you. I don't think if this were the only thing that came out in this episode, I don't think it would be all that, what do we call it? Bombshell evidence.
It wouldn't be such a bombshell.
It wouldn't be such a bombshell, right? I think it's interesting in that, especially that footage of the car driving away at a high rate of speed. To me, that is fairly convincing that vehicle is involved in the murders, right? Before it was just like, okay, a white car driving around, who knows what that is or what it's connected to. But now when you see that high rate of speed, you're like, okay, that car likely just did something, right? That person's trying to get away. Right. But to your point about the Google searches, I'm so glad you said this. It would be very different if he were a biology major. But when you're a criminology major, is it all that remarkable that you're searching for Ted Bundy, or that you're looking at research papers done by a professor about serial killers? Now, I think the prosecution might try to use this stuff and might be interested in it, because one of the big questions that, in my view, the prosecution has still not really provided an answer for, we still have to put on a trial, but we haven't really learned motive. Like, why? What connection does he have to these people, or why did he decide to do something this awful? And when I say he, I mean Bryan Kohberger. That's their suspect. Why did he do this? And I think so when you look at things then about like Ted Bundy and, some of the Google searches he did, and wearing the hoodie that's in connection to the Ted Bundy video, maybe you start to see how it might have some relevance. But I'll be honest with you, I could see a judge also saying, I'm not letting any of this in. It's not, it doesn't, it's not connected enough, and it's just too confusing to the jury of what value to place on it.
Right. It could almost be like character assassination, rather than focusing on the crime and the suspect, because it's all about how awkward he was at a pool party, what does that have to do really, with the murders at the end of the day? So it's that. And then like, obviously his Google searches, which can so easily be, no, man, he was, studying his PhD, easy to argue away from either side. So to me, it wasn't like, oh my word, this is so shocking. What have they leaked here? The only thing that was like, oh, I wonder where they got that, but they could have gotten it from the neighbors themselves for all we know. Maybe
the only thing that I will say about the Ted Bundy thing is Have you ever read Ann Rule's book about the Ted Bundy case? And I mean, there's plenty of Ted Bundy stuff, but it is remarkable to me how, this is a random kind of attack against a home where a bunch of co-eds were living and multiple people were attacked at once. And the only other case I can think of that's very similar to that is Ted Bundy, where he went into a sorority near Florida State University in Tallahassee and randomly attacked several girls in the same span of time that he was unconnected to in any kind of way. It just is, it's like, I can't think of another case that's so nightmarishly similar. So that when I heard the Ted Bundy thing, I was like, I've been thinking that for weeks. But as far as like it being admitted as evidence, I think I could easily see the judge saying no way.
Right. I'm sure the judge will say that eventually. However, what's interesting about the Ted Bundy angle is that his mother was like advocating for Ted Bundy not to be executed when Bryan Kohberger was young. So I think Ted Bundy was quite a prominent topic in the household. I'm speculating. Yeah. But so it is interesting if we were to study his psychology, of if he is in the end the killer. Right now is innocent till proven guilty. A lot of people, it's arguments like, a little bit like Karen Reed, this side or that side. Like, which side are you on? I'm just on the fence over here. Okay. I'm just looking at what we're receiving on a daily basis, especially as we get closer to the trial. Lots of information coming out.
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought. The Ted Bundy thing. I lost my train of thought with all the fighting. Innocent till proven guilty. Yes. What am I trying to say? Guys, help me out. I have no idea. I was going to ask you such a question about this now. Talking about Ted Bundy, you see, when I started going about the arguments and I looked at the chat, I can already see it.
That's my fault because I got you on that whole tangent about.
Oh, no, but it's. And now I'm going red. Thank you so much all for being here, you guys. I'm just, to me, I just don't know if any of what we've just learned, that's what I'm saying. I've before done a deep dive video where we looked at Bryan Kohberger's background, exactly where he grew up, where he went to university, what he was like, some of his pictures, that he struggled with substance abuse, all of that. And that I don't think will be part of the trial either. So I just don't know. Well, there's 3 Dateline episodes as well. This is the 3rd one. And slowly but surely, we've learned more and more and more. So I don't know. I don't think we should panic, No.
And I agree with you that probably a lot of what we learned is not going to come in. Like like you said, the background stuff, the relationships with people, this idea that, they did a whole several minutes on the fact that he was hiking up a hill at dusk and other people were hiking down the hill and they ran into each other and they thought it was so bizarre that he was hiking up that hill at night. I don't think any of that kind of stuff is really game changing and going to make its way to the trial. But there was some things in here that I thought really raised some eyebrows with me. Like one thing that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but the idea that he changed his license plates within days of the murders, to me, that's a huge piece of evidence. I mean, that, like, talk about consciousness of guilt type stuff. Again, people change their license plates all the time. Not a huge deal. But when you put it in perspective of the timing of when this all took place, it starts to make sense. And remember,
what if it was time? What if it was time? What if it was just coincidentally time?
Correct. But the thing about it is you take all of these weird coincidences and all of this bizarre behavior, and you also attach that to the guy whose DNA was found on a knife sheath at the scene. And now you're putting together a very solid case.
That's important. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So I remembered what my train of thought was. That's what I was saying. His mom was advocating against the death penalty for Ted Bundy. So if one were to study his psychology, I think that would be interesting. But I don't think his character and psychology will necessarily be part of the trial. It's more like, did he commit a quadruple homicide or not? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Ginger Root, for helping me remember where my train of thought was going.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, they've litigated a lot of this, and I think the judge is going to be very careful to make sure much of his psychology does not get into the case.
Yeah.
And the defense doesn't really want it because the defense is saying it's not him anyways. So they're not trying to make some sort of mental health defense here. They're saying it's not our guy. So his mental situation really plays no role other than they've tried to introduce this autism spectrum disorder by trying to explain his behavior in court. And I think that was their back end way of trying to throw that in there. But the judge didn't go for that either.
Right. So what you just said earlier, that's what I want to bring up, because, for example, Ginger Root, you said earlier, I've taken a pic of my car with new plates so I could try to remember my plate number in case I needed to know it. So there's a lot of comments that I've seen, you know, similarly, like, wait, I go hiking at night, or I go running at night. What's wrong with that? Or, but I like to study Ted Bundy. I mean, I myself wrote a book on Ted Bundy once upon a time. I have an audiobook too. It's up there. So I'm going to be putting it exclusively on Patreon probably soon. But the point is that that when people say, but I go running at night, I go hiking at night, I've studied Ted Bundy, I've Googled those things. Yeah, but your DNA is not on a knife sheath that was found at a quadruple homicide scene. And that's obviously the biggest difference.
Right.
So it's the totality of all those things.
Yeah, the case begins at the DNA on the knife sheath, right? And then it becomes a question of, do you believe that that was planted there, or somehow innocently his DNA ended up there? Or do you believe that it's there because he was implicated? Well, if you're the prosecution, you're going to say it's there because he was implicated, and I will show you all this other circumstantial evidence to show that. You know, what are the chances that a guy whose DNA was found at the crime scene also happens to drive a vehicle similar to the suspect vehicle, you know, also happens to change his license plates, also happens to have a similar build and eyebrows to what was described by the person there, also happens to, not have an alibi for where he was during the time. Also happens to
Josh. He was stargazing.
Right. Also happens to have driven within 100 yards of the crime scene, a dozen or so times beforehand. I mean, it's just like when you start to add up all of these, and all of those things, by the way, like to your viewers' point, are innocent things. But when you put them on top of the center point being that his DNA was found there, then it starts to sound like a very solid circumstantial case.
Right. I want to show this clip quickly here of Keith Morrison, obviously from Dateline, and Nate Eaton from East Idaho News, because here they actually talk about the DNA that you had just brought up as well, because that's such a huge part of the case. That's, as you said, that's where the case starts. So let's quickly just look at this little bit here.
There is the DNA on the knife sheath, but also a slight problem with that in that the FBI broke its own rules in order to be able to test that DNA with a familial DNA site that normally is not available to them. You have to sign a form saying you're okay with law enforcement looking into your DNA profile if you want to be on one of these sites. But the FBI went to a site where people do not sign that waiver, and it's a bigger site. They have, that gives them the opportunity to whittle down who the person would be that they're looking for, and it succeeded. But they're supposedly prevented by their own regulations from entering that website.
So, thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic, and it's something that I think some people get a little confused by. So, first of all, Bryan Kohberger's DNA, he has no right of, he has no claim of privacy to that. If you leave DNA at a crime scene, you can't then say, "Hey, I've got a privacy right in you using my DNA." So he doesn't have what we call standing to question the collection of his DNA or the testing of his DNA. But then you go, well, what about all these people on this website who didn't sign off to their DNA being used? Well, they may have a claim to say that the FBI used their DNA inappropriately, but they don't have a claim in Bryan Kohberger's case because their rights are not being they don't have standing to bring a Fourth Amendment issue in a case that doesn't involve them. In other words, it's the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger, and they're not a named defendant. Therefore, their rights, their Fourth Amendment protections aren't at play in Bryan Kohberger's case. So, okay, so those are kind of the foundational things. Then you've got the idea of, well, listen, the FBI has their own internal guidelines as to how they will use this DNA or not. So they took the DNA, they put it into CODIS, nothing came back. Where the FBI went a step further than what they normally do and what may arguably be against their own kind of guidelines is that they then created that profile and put it into other databases to create this, to find out what hits they got on family members and to create a family tree and kind of reverse engineer who their suspect might have been. That's the FBI's own rules. It's not the Constitution that's at play. It's not Bryan Kohberger's Fourth Amendment rights that are at play. It's the FBI's own rules. And my understanding is the FBI just said, this is important enough. We're going to basically break our own rules and go ahead and do this because this is important enough to try to figure out who this person was. Because if you remember, or not remember, but now we know, they had nothing. This guy had been on the loose for weeks. They had nothing and no leads and nothing really good. They had a kind of a general description of a car and a general description of a guy with bushy eyebrows. They had zilch to go off of till they could figure out who this DNA belonged to.
Exactly. So I think that issue has already been dealt with by the judge, from what I'm understanding. Yes. They're going to talk about it as they got to him from a tip and all of that. I know some people are very upset about that and think that's concerning. But I think the judge has already sorted that out for the trial, which is starting with jury selection on June 30th, for those of you wondering. And the trial is supposed to be starting on, is it August 7th? It's a really long trial. Shame. There's the victims, Ethan, Xana, Madison, and Kaylee. And then just quickly, when is the trial? I mean, from August 11th is when they expect opening statements to take place until November 7th is set to last, which includes the penalty phase of the trial. So that's another question I actually had for you. How does that work? Because a lot of people ask me that as well. Like, what do they mean by obviously the penalty phase of the trial? Why is this trial so long?
Yeah. Well, it's a death penalty case. So they're going to, the state is going to be, and we know that for a fact now, they're going to be pursuing the death penalty. The defense has kind of exhausted all objections to that. Because of that, jury selection is going to take a bit longer because you have to find what's called a death qualified jury, meaning everybody who's going to sit on this jury doesn't have some sort of moral or religious objection to the death penalty. In other words, they're all going to be asked if they feel that this is an appropriate case, would they be willing to vote for death? And if you say no, under no circumstances, you're not going to be on the jury. So it's going to take a little longer to pick that jury. The case itself is not really complicated because it's not, I mean, yes, I know we're involving a incredible loss of life, but it's, one incident on one evening, one suspect, it just happens to be 4 murders. But I think when you get into the IgG evidence with the DNA, with the, location evidence of the cell phones, with the surveillance video tracking, all of those things are going to take several days each to put on, but it still seems like a very long time to me. But then to your ultimate question, once this jury has the question of guilty or not guilty presented to them, if they come back with a guilty verdict, then that same jury will sit through what's called the penalty phase, and they will then be presented with a lot of other evidence that wasn't allowed at trial. So that's when we are going to get into whether or not he is on the autism spectrum, his family background, whether or not he was ever abused, whether or not he ever abused drugs. He was a heroin addict. There's some evidence of that, all of that kind of stuff. And that could take a little bit of time too. And then the question before the jury at that point is, do they vote for the death penalty or do they vote for life without parole? And just one last point, if they can't agree, then it defaults to life without parole. So if the jury comes out split, deadlocked on that issue, it reverts to life without parole. And it's not like you get a hung trial on penalty. It just reverts to life without parole.
Okay. And does the jury obviously know before the time? They are told before the time that this is going to be very long, right? You
Yeah,
expect it
yeah,
to
they
be here
will.
for like
They will.
3 months
That's
of
the
your
other.
life.
That's the other reason why it's going to take a long time too. Is just getting people who are able to serve that. They're going to lose a lot of jurors who just say, "I can't be away from work that long." So it's going to be. If you think about it, you're going to have a jury pool full of people who either get paid indefinite time by their work to sit on a jury. So a lot of government workers or retired folks. And then people who kind of lean a little more conservative because they're all going to be people who say that they could vote for the death penalty if they had to. So that jury pool is going to be a little different, that potential jury pool, than what we're used to seeing.
Sure. I don't know if I'd want to be in their shoes.
No,
It's so
no.
long. It's so much responsibility, of course. I know it's always a lot of responsibility on one's shoulders, but sure, in a capital case, this is going to be quite something as well. And they go straight into the next phase after the first phase, right? So once the
Yeah.
first phase, let's say if they find him guilty, if they obviously find him not guilty, then everybody goes home,
Everybody goes home.
right?
Yeah.
But
Or
if they find him
or if
guilty,
they're deadlocked, same thing. If they're deadlocked, they
or
got to
that,
start all over again. Yeah.
oh my word, obviously that as well. If it's
No.
then it would be a mistrial declared, but then all the jury would go home, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They'd have to start
Everybody
over
goes home for a
completely.
pause.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody goes
starting
home.
over. Oh my goodness. So then let's say if they were to find him guilty, would they just, let's say it's on a Wednesday, would they start with the next phase on a Thursday?
They could. I mean, lots of times judges say, listen, we're going to give you a breather, but everybody show back on Monday. Show back up on Monday, and we're going to start a new phase in this trial. But yeah, they will find that out immediately that they're not released.
Yes. I've also been wondering if they will be sequestered. I haven't seen anything of that. Have you?
I have not seen that either. I don't know if the judge has even discussed it. But you know what? With this new Dateline episode, it could be one of those things where the chances of that happening, but God, to ask people, I mean, it also depends on what kind of sequestration you're talking about. If you're having them live away from their home for that much time, is going to be a lot of a burden to put on people. But it could be one of those things where they, monitor people's electronics, monitor their phones. I don't know. I could see there being, like I said, this next court hearing that we have, I imagine a lot of this stuff is going to be brought up because this was a lot of new information that was released that I don't think anybody planned on being released ahead of time.
Right. I'm sure, as you said, the attorneys, the judge, everyone's now, maybe all of law enforcement, having serious meetings probably today.
Yeah.
Oh my, because obviously they would all, I would assume they'd all watch it as well, right? They're like, oh, here we go.
Oh, if they didn't watch it, the supervisors got some phone calls, turn on Dateline right now. You're not going to believe what's coming out. Yeah, that was, like you said, Dateline's covered this before, and it's all kind of been stuff we've heard and they've repackaged it. But this was like stuff I had never heard before. I mean, remember the 3D modeling they did of the home and where they believe the murders took place? That was just wild. It was bombshell, Gisela. It was bombshell.
Listen here. You asked what my pet peeve was today. So yeah, it was bombshell. It was jaw dropping. I mean, I did find it like, whoa, I need to watch that again. So again, thank you to Grizzly Cat for making it possible for me, because did you know we can't watch it outside of America? Not even with the VPN. For everyone commenting, just get a VPN. You can't. Dateline needs to make it available worldwide.
They do.
So that we can be part of it. So I just really want to bring up again what was new for those just joining now and what this is all about. So we're busy discussing this new, The Terrible Night on King Road Dateline episode that aired on May 9th of 2025, of course. And then it was available on Dateline. And the next day they made it available on Peacock. So all those links are in my description box. And I would highly recommend going to check out the full episode. So that's what we're talking about. I'm sure the whole internet is talking about this right now. This was huge. Obviously just being 3 months out from the trial. And what was new was never before seen surveillance footage of the alleged vehicle, and more importantly, in the time frame where they believe the murders were committed, between 4:07 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. on November 13th of 2022. New ominous selfies and digital evidence. See, that's what I wanted to ask you again. That, like, the selfies, do they really matter for the trial? Do they?
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, all of this stuff is stuff that I'm sure any one of us may have done. You know, I mean, it's each of these things in this list here, you're right, standing alone, kind of innocent behavior, except when you say, and by the way, the same person who's taken these selfies with a hoodie is also a person that may have been described as wearing a hoodie, you know, at the crime scene, because we have their DNA at the crime scene. Like it all starts to take on a very ominous new meaning put in perspective of who they believe he is.
True. You know what was interesting for me in the episode is every time when this for me was actually the most damning, was the Amazon searches he was doing and finding out just how many times, not only did he buy the K-bar knife and sheath and a sharpener in March of 2022, so that's months before the murders were committed. They moved to Washington in June of 2022. The murders were committed on November 13th of 2022. And in that time, he'd apparently been very close to the house 23 times. Previously, they said 12, so they've obviously got more now, because now they're saying 23 times in 4 months, starting from the night of the pool party. That's also so weird. Like right after the pool party, now it's suddenly around the house, allegedly.
Very good
allegedly,
point. Very good point.
So
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
That is interesting. But for me, the most damning was like after the murders, not only was he already on November 15th searching University of Idaho murders, okay, obviously Googling his own name. He did that even before. But dang, those Amazon searches for a knife sheath on its own, specifically when that's the one thing that he allegedly left behind. That's the one thing with the DNA on. You're looking for a sheath, bro.
Yeah.
And after that, knife and sheath. And clicking fine now. Yeah, and then erasing it.
And then erasing that search. Yeah.
Oh, man, and so many times he actually, you could almost feel, and I'm just speculating from my own personal opinion, how conflicted he was about it. Like, I need to replace that in case. He was worried about it, but like also never mind. Buy now? Nope. And then let's rather buy a knife and sheath. Nope, we're not going to buy it. It's so weird. Like that to me was, I think that's going to be part of the trial.
I agree. That is, again, what you could say is innocent behavior. I mean, we've all gone on Amazon and searched for stuff and even put it in our cart and then later decided not to buy it. But there are none of us in this chat who did that within 8 days of these murders and then went about erasing that search history. I agree with you. You can almost see the conflict in the way that he was behaving about, do I do this or don't I? Is it worse if I buy it, or is it worse that I don't have a knife sheath?
Right. I mean, there were also stories of him making women uncomfortable, following females to the car because he was a teacher's assistant at the university where he was studying to his PhD in criminology. All of that, I don't think, as I said earlier, I don't think that's going to be part of the trial. However, what was interesting as well is that story, which I wonder if the state will use it, not that they have proof that it's him, of perhaps maybe breaking into that one lady's apartment, but he shared an office with her. Her key disappears. There's a break-in that she could see the cake is moved. Her cosmetics are moved. And the next day, her key just appears back in the drawer. That was interesting, too. I wonder if they'll bring that in at all.
And another one, I don't know if a judge will allow that in, because are we then getting into just kind of the character of this person? How is it really relevant to, I mean, obviously from the prosecution's point of view, it's relevant that he's the type of person willing to break into somebody's home, females, you know, and be abusive of their privacy rights and everything else. But if you're the prosecution or if you're the defense, you're saying, are you kidding me? The jurors might convict him over that and not the evidence against him. I think this is another one where I could see the judge saying, I'm not going to allow you to have it.
Right.
To the prosecution, I mean.
We can expect probably a pile of documents soon. Every time we look again, there's a whole new pile of documents in this case. So Maureen said, I fill my Amazon cart up all the time, then I get real. So see, I think we can all relate to that. I think the issue in this case is that his DNA was found on a knife sheath left behind at the crime scene. And then he's specifically looking for a knife sheath. I think that is just pretty scary. You know? If
we did not have the DNA on the knife sheath, they would not have a case. I mean, like you said, all of this stuff, as kind of circumstantial and maybe even convincing as some of it is, without the DNA tying him to the crime scene, I don't even think they filed this case. This whole case really hinges upon that. and then everything else kind of fills in why this guy, it answered that question of, was it there innocently or was it there not? And the prosecution adds all of this other stuff to say, no, it was not there innocently.
Exactly. Yes. So somebody is saying, Holly, sorry, not confirmed it was his dad. It was a family member on the dad's family phone plan. In the Dateline episode, they did mention that he called most likely his dad for 2 hours after the murders, and 3 times. The first call 36 minutes, later it was 54 minutes. And I'm sure we're all dying to know, what the hell did he say? So it was a family plan, but apparently it's from their family home. So I don't know if his sister still lived in the home or not, or if they're on the family plan or not. So it just sounded like Dateline was saying it was the dad, but yes, it could be any family member, legally speaking. Could have been the mom, could have been the sisters, could have been anyone on the family plan. But either way, those phone calls that he made right after the murders, when he took the shower selfie, oh my goodness, that's interesting timing as well. Just when the state is going to put this all together. There, that selfie. There, 3 calls to his dad or family that morning, right after the murders, longest lasting 54 minutes.
So so within 2 hours, he made 3 calls, the longest being 54 minutes. Yeah. I mean,
yes.
Again, people call their family innocent behavior, but, does that take on a new meaning given what, police believe he was up to within 2 hours of that? It also starts to maybe shed some light on why the prosecution wants to call the family members, right? I mean, maybe they want to know what was taking place on these phone calls.
I'm sure they will want to know. Yeah. And what are your thoughts about the judge now ruling that Kohberger's family members are allowed to sit in the courtroom during the trial, even though some of them will be called up as witnesses?
Yeah.
To testify.
I like this judge. I think this judge has been very reasonable and trying to be very fair. Maybe not everybody agrees, but I think he has been. And I think usually when there's a motion to exclude, meaning we don't want witnesses who haven't testified yet to be in court, that's because we're concerned that those witnesses may be affected by testimony that they hear. And maybe the judge, now kind of understanding what the prosecution wants to call them for, realizes that their testimony wouldn't be affected in any way by anything they would hear ahead of their testimony. So he's trying to be a little deferential to the defense and allow them to be there. It's obviously I think he even pointed out that they don't deserve what they're going through in life. And he's trying to allow for them to be present during this, trying time in their family's history.
Yes. So another question everybody has is about his parents. When they arrested him, this Dateline episode said, it was actually Howard Bloom who said this specific quote, that they went in there. It was obviously that whole SWAT team at like 1:15 in the morning. And it was on December 30th of 2022. And he had just listened to that Britney Spears cover, which again, I don't think that's got any relevance in the courtroom, even though the lyrics are interesting. Yeah. But they went in there, and then Howard Bloom said that they zip tied the parents. So everybody's very alarmed about that. From my understanding, that would be to keep the whole family safe if they're breaking into the house in the middle of the night so that nobody shoots them or attacks them or whatever. It's for their own safety. Would it not be? Or is that an issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but you got to realize the police believe that they are apprehending a person who has committed a quadruple murder, right? That is as high a level of armed and dangerous as you can possibly get. They don't know if he is waiting inside with an AK-47 and a bag full of grenades, right? What they also don't know is how much the family knows. They don't know if the family is willing to protect him through all of that. So it's about as an extremely volatile and dangerous situation as the police can handle. So yes, it's unfortunate. It's traumatic for the family, but I am not surprised at all that they would bust in there and detain everybody for officer safety and for everyone's safety immediately. It also has to be like, you don't want a cop accidentally shooting someone because they're not detained and they don't know what they're up to, and they're just going to grab the phone to call a lawyer and they think they're going for a gun. I mean, it's like everybody needs to kind of take a deep breath, but yeah, I would not read too much into it beyond that.
Right. I don't think they abuse the parents or something. I think it was for their own safety. That's kind of what I was thinking, because some people are like, what do you mean zip tied? Because it was like one of the bullet points on my presentation in the video. And I didn't go too much into it. I'm like, and then they zip tied his parents. And everyone's like, what do you they zip tied his parents. I'm like, my bad. Let me
Yeah.
explain that a little bit further. Also,
Yeah.
to explain these phone calls, just the time quickly a little bit further, because a lot of people left comments about this. So he called on November 13th at 6:17 a.m., which is about 2 hours after the murders had been committed. He's the suspect. And so for his dad, though, in Pennsylvania, obviously he's ahead of his time zone. So it's not like at the crack of dawn for his dad. It's early for him, but for his dad, it would be like 9:15 in the morning, and then more calls after that. Still early-ish, in my opinion, but not at the crack of dawn, because a lot of people were saying that. So let's clear that one up as well. Sure, lots to see. There's lots to talk about just with this Dateline episode, and there's so much that we haven't even gone over. Wow. So what do you think is going to happen next beyond a pile of documents, closed meetings, lots of talk from the attorneys, if we could be a fly on the wall about this?
Yeah, I don't think, like I said before, I don't think anything that came out in this episode is really going to change the timeline of the case. I don't think it's going to cause the judge to delay anything. I don't think it's going to cause the judge to really change any of his rulings. I think it may cause a lot of internal turmoil in the prosecutor's office and law enforcement trying to figure out where did all of this come from? How did, now that I'm saying that, I mean, another source of this information could have been the defense as well. I mean, we keep on assuming that it's law enforcement, but the defense has access to all this information as well. They could have leaked some of this, or someone on the defense team could have leaked it. So a lot of people are going to be, scrutinized as far as the protecting this information and how that all got leaked. But I don't think it's going to cause the judge to really change anything as far as the trajectory and timing of the case.
Yeah, that was the biggest question. Is like, will this delay the trial? And if there's a small chance, which we're not accusing the defense at all of leaking anything, it's just speculating, wondering if they did have, it would probably be to try to pump the brakes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, assuming, and we are speculating, assuming some rogue member of the defense team did this in some sort of wild attempt to maybe get more time. But again, I could just see a judge going, well, that's unfortunate. We're going to have to ask jurors about that on voir dire, but we're moving forward. See you all in August.
Right. You and I have recently spoken about some crazy things attorneys allegedly do to buy themselves time. Hey.
Yes, we have.
Wow. Yeah. The Gregory Moore guy that was arrested in Elisa Sherman's case. If you guys didn't see that, it's on True Crime News' Sidebar podcast. I was recently a guest there. Josh is the host there. So go check that one out, because, wow, that was a delayed tactic of note. There were bomb threats and then an alleged murder. Like, what?
Yeah.
So who knows? We've got to keep our minds open, right? But in general, you're not worried about this, or are you?
I'm not worried about it affecting the case going forward or changing anything the judges decided up until now, or the timing of the case. I think more than anything, he's going to be upset, and people are going to be upset that it got leaked, and they might have kind of more strict rules about discovery. In some of these cases, they will watermark documents and digitally watermarked information that's been turned over, and perhaps that will be a change. But the proverbial cat is out of the bag already if it's on Dateline, so they kind of missed the boat on protecting some of this information.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness. So please tell us where people can find you so that they can continue to follow your very interesting, insightful conversations where we learn so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Gisela. This is a treat, and I always appreciate it. Go to Courtroom Confidential or go to Courtroom Confidential on YouTube. You can also check out our new channel, Courtroom Confidential Live Trials, where we're streaming the Karen Reed trial right now, and I'm trying to pop in here or there where I can. And then our website is thecourtroomconfidential.com, where you can find out all of that stuff. Our you can see photographs of me sitting awkwardly on a chair like that, and then you can also hear about our membership and our merchandise and all the stuff we're working on.
You know what? You just walked into that question now. There's bonus questions now. Are you ready?
Yeah.
The bonus question is they alleged that the killer sat on a chair,
Yeah.
like left bloody prints on a chair,
Yeah.
but yet left no, from what we know, bloody footprints and any other DNA evidence. If you put your defense attorney hat on, like, because I know you're practicing as a defense attorney now, what the hell would you make? Wouldn't that be such a strong point to bring up for the defense? Like, where's his DNA other than the knife sheath?
Oh, huge point. I mean, adding to that, they searched his car more than once with a fine-tooth comb trying to find anything inside of that vehicle. They searched his apartment and they did not find one bit of DNA matching him to that crime scene. That is phenomenal. I mean, that is just hard to wrap your head around, especially now what we're learning about this crime scene being very perhaps violent and very bloody. I mean, initially, I think we were led to believe that they all maybe died in their sleep, but now we're finding out, no, that's not true. There was quite a bit of fighting going on, and quite a bit of blood. How did none of that end up in his vehicle? And that's going to be something the prosecution's going to have to answer. If I'm the defense, that is probably one of my biggest points, if not the biggest, is you're telling me this huge, horrible, violent, multi-location, bloody crime scene, and the one piece of DNA is some touch DNA on the button of the strap of the knife sheath, and try to make as much of that as you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. I think many of us wonder. I know that one of the FBI agents on the show said that he's seen it before when there's no DNA left behind. And we know that allegedly, I'm going to say, we know allegedly Kohberger bought some like a Dickie suit and some booty shoesies, whatever, all the things that could help to prevent that. But still, I mean, that is unbelievable that there was no hair, sweat, no other DNA, no bloody footprints. It is weird.
Yeah.
I think that's also why there's a lot of speculation in this case, because that's just weird. And in his car and in his apartment, there's no connection to the home, to the victims, with his car, his apartment, his parents' house, or anything besides the DNA on the knife sheath.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Yeah. It's going to be a very difficult. It's probably going to be the most difficult question that the prosecution is going to have to answer. And the answer is, like, I think what you said, he took measures to avoid it. He covered himself up. He wasn't apprehended immediately. So he had time to clean up his car, and he had time to clean up his house. And, quite frankly, just because the investigators didn't find it doesn't mean it's not there. It could also just mean they didn't find it. But that's a difficult kind of argument to make to jurors who are like you and I, kind of common sense people who go, are you kidding me?
Right. Somebody says he removed his second layers of clothing. This is why he left the other roommates alone, couldn't risk contamination. Sure, that's an interesting theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Or he was exhausted.
Yeah.
He being the alleged killer. We don't know. He's innocent or proven guilty. He's been charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary, and he's going to trial soon. Do you think that the judge will continue to allow cameras in the courtroom?
I think so. And I really hope so. I think this is a very important case that a lot of people have been following. And it is a case where people have questions. And I think that the best way to handle that is more light shed on it. I think that when we don't have cameras in the courtroom, it causes more people to question what is actually happening inside. And I really hope that it is, so that we can all see how this whole thing plays out.
Okay, I promise I'm going to let you go now. I know you're a very, very busy guy, but one more. Josh, what's your opinion about the house being taken down? That's a good question.
Lori Lowe, it drives me nuts. I do not understand it. In many cases, the crime scene itself is not that important. But in a case like this, I think that home is very important, because we want to know, why didn't the other roommates hear all of this going on? What were they able to hear? How thin are those walls? How far away are the bedrooms from each other? How can you break into that home? And, just so many questions. And I know that they've done 3D imaging and all of that kind of stuff, but there really nothing can replace the crime scene itself. And even if they were never going to go out there, I would hate for that to become an issue mid-trial and that creates some sort of problem. So to me, it's like, I understand they're probably, no one's ever going to live in that home, want to purchase that home, live in that home again. The community probably doesn't want to see that home. The college doesn't want to see that home, but wait till the trial is over before you do that. That really kind of bothered me.
Yeah, me too. So thank you for answering that one as well. I think most of us feel the same about that. Even though I empathize with the community and understand the students, it was a painful reminder, but for the trial, that would have been pretty important. Yeah. So thank you so much. One more time, go check out, everybody, thecourtroomconfidential.com. You can check out the channel, Courtroom Confidential, or the second channel, the second channel, Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. All the links to Josh's website and channels are in the description box. The other things that are in the description box is the video that I made summarizing all of this we've been talking about today. So if you missed that video, you can go check that out. And maybe if you missed some of that context, it would be helpful. I hope so. That's why I worked hard on those summaries for you, which is all these slides I've been bringing up here today. You can go and check that out there. If you missed it, and of course, please do go check out the Dateline episode. All the links for that are also in the description box. Anything else, Josh, from you?
No, just thank you so much. Thank you to all the Grizzlies. I always appreciate the support from you and your community.
Thank you. And they're asking, can they still, where do you answer questions? On your shows, right? You do answer questions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Especially on Sundays, you answer a lot of questions.
And on Sundays, leave us a message. Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and leave us a message, and we'll answer it on Sunday. I'm waiting for your message, Gisela. I'm waiting.
I'm waiting for you to call a friend. That's going to be me. I've seen you called other friends.
I know. Don't worry.
I got to leave a message as well. So guys, go check that out. Make sure you've got upcoming. You're so busy. You've got premieres. You've got live streams. So much is happening on both your channels. And then you're the host of True Crime News Sidebar podcast. So thank you so much for all you do, for spending some time here with us. And thank you, Grizzlies, all for being here. Stay safe, everyone.